rising, everybody. It's always so good to be here. I really appreciate you all. So Hearts Ablaze, I like the reading that you chose because I had two different openings I was thinking about today. And one of them was just thinking back, imagining. We all started the same way. So maybe our moment, or more than likely, our moment of the biggest vulnerability that we ever have was probably when we were all babies. So before we started taking those steps and growing, think about a baby. It's just wide open, completely vulnerable, completely dependent on those around them. Human beings, we have the longest period where the offspring needs the mother. Some animals come out and they're ready to be independent right away. Others take a little more time. But in that moment of that open vulnerability, that heart is wide open. They're completely receptive to this world, to those around them. And that can be a little scary. I imagine, for an infant, who knows what goes through that mind as it's still just kind of developing. But thinking about that amount of dependence and vulnerability opens up the space for love, which I think, as we grow through life, we learn to protect ourselves, we learn to step and walk, and we learn to do bigger things. But I'm really dry today. We slowly shut down that heart space that child knows just so fully, that is so open, willing to share. And the power of the heart is what I believe we're here in these spaces to rediscover. When we start looking down these spiritual teachings and stuff, you'll sometimes hear this expression we're I learned so much from that class. I learned so much. But the idea is we didn't learn it. We're just remembering what we come from. That baby is still kind of on the cusp of two different worlds. But then as we grow older, and maybe we might use the word wiser, because we learn how to protect ourselves. We don't want to be a doormat. We don't want to be taken advantage of. But if we protect ourselves too much, then we lose that power of the heart. And so for me, that's why I'm here. Now the risk, so the other opening that I was talking about doing is, I've used it before, is why I was a little hesitant. But I want you to ask, think for just a second. Do you know when you're walking into a building and you open the door and you see somebody coming? Who do you hold the door for? Do you hold it for women? Do you hold it for children? Do you hold it for anybody? Well, the proposition that I want to put here, it's not a judgment. I'll preface it with that. Don't take this personal. What I want to convey is that I think a lot of us, and I know this because you're actually holding the door for yourself. Let me explain a little bit. I told this story before, but I did not tell the origin of it. So it was back in around 08, 09. When I was going through a shift in my life, when I left the party life behind, and I was exploring something more. And I heard a story on the radio. I remember where we were driving, and it was somebody that opened the door for somebody, and then somebody came through and just walked right on by. And this person said, "You're welcome," and yelled at him. I've done that a couple times back in the day. I'm not proud of it. But the person that they said it to was the wrong person the wrong day. And they went to the car, they got a gun, came back, and took that person out. They did not like being told that. When I heard that story and I thought about it, I'm like, I've done that. And then I didn't realize, that's kind of fighting words. You're telling somebody, I don't like the way that you just did something. Are you, ready to talk about it? Are you ready to back that up? But then that got me thinking, and I'm like, I've gotten kind of upset when I've held the door for people. Why? Am I actually holding it for them, or am I holding it to get that pat on the back that says, Chris, you're a good guy? It doesn't matter what your third grade teacher said. You're good. That person just thanked you, and they smiled at you. And then when I don't get that, then it's like, well, the indignancy. And so that, for me, was one of my first shifts of recognizing I just saw a wonderful quote, and I think it was it Lao Tzu, I think, that said, when you care or when you worry about what other people think about you, you are forever their prisoner. Yeah, I know, it hit me, I know. Okay, so once I realized I am holding that for myself, then I could either keep doing that and keep expecting, and getting upset when I don't get the reaction that I want, or I can move on and say, no, I'm here for service. I want to hold that door open, and I don't care the reaction. And that for me, it gave me more power. It's reminding me that we are the only ones responsible for our own state of mind, for our own peace. But so often, we place that on all the people around us. This person did that and ruined my day. This person did that and broke my heart. And I'm not denying that those things really hurt. But that's part of the thing that we signed up for. And so what I don't want to do is I don't want to get to the end of my life and, having been hurt when my beloved dog made its transition over the Rainbow Bridge, and that just hurt so bad that I'm never going to hurt like that again. So that I'm done with pets. Which is not true, but and this person hurt me, so now I'm done even putting myself out there. I'm done trying, and that's just little piece after piece that life is slipping away. And so I don't want to get to the end of my life and know that I held back too much, which, didn't start to realize, I didn't start to come to these realizations till late in life, and actually yesterday, still having some of these revelations when I'm getting caught up in what I think is important, this has to get done, this has to get done, and then forgetting the little things that just make it all worthwhile. And so where that story about holding the door came from was a talk that I talked about the balance of heart and mind. And so I'm trying to think of where I want to go into first. Everybody, we come from two different places, and there are actually scientists are starting to see that, yes, the heart itself, one, it emits electric waves like the brain does. We can measure them the same way, but they're more powerful. They have a broader circle. And they're starting to realize, there's some thinking going on in that space, but it comes from a different energy. And so I'm thinking about repeating a joke, and again, you've heard this from me before, so I can say that. And it's not a judgment, and it's not a statement of what I believe is right or wrong, but it's something else that got me thinking several years ago, and it was a Facebook post. A friend of mine who is politically very conservative, and he said, when I was in college, I was a Democrat because I had heart. But now I'm older, and I'm a Republican because I have a brain. And so however you want to interpret it, it doesn't matter on either side, because I like to think that I'm somewhere in the mix of all of that, because nothing is black or white or right or wrong. Nothing. It's all shades of gray. But when I thought about it, I'm well, this will give you a little bit more about like my understanding and my personality, but I was like, I don't want to lose heart. I don't ever want to lose heart. But then, what if I'm too much heart? And so if I'm too much heart, I used an example of, I want to help people. So I meet somebody on the street who's having a really hard time in their life, and I want to help them get into a place, get into an apartment, get a job going. I want to do all this. So I go and I empty out my checking account. I get them a deposit on a place. We get them moved in. And then, a week later, it's the end of the month. I've got to pay my rent, and I don't have anything left because I was just all heart, and I just gave and gave and gave like the giving tree until there's just nothing left to give. That's no good, because then you're not helping anybody, and now all of a sudden you're dependent and you need that help from others. And if that happened all along the line, pretty soon, as a species, we are no longer. Now, the other end of that is if we are all mind and, our defenses are up, we're protecting ourselves, we can't let anybody think that we were taken advantage of, then which I think as a society, we've kind of gotten a little unbalanced of that, to where we see people that need help. We see people that are raising their hands and saying, I need help, and there's just nothing there. There's a little there. But do you see where I'm going? Like, we've got to really have this balance. And that is where I see the future of spirituality, of what we're doing here, is that we're getting back into our heart spaces. And so, yes, we got to protect ourselves, because you can't help anybody if you're not vulnerable, if you're hurt or, incapacitated. But I don't want to ever lose that humanity of why we're here. And so we teach affirmative prayer here. We call it spiritual mind treatment. And we know that it brings results, and that's why we do it. That's why we commit, 5 years of study to become a practitioner, to make that our way of life. But prayer doesn't have power from the words. You don't just, you don't open like a book of incantations and just read, weekly talk titles, sticking to a prayer that's just read off a page. While they have value, I was raised Catholic, and I appreciated doing the rosary. It's a meditative process. But when we talk about affirmative prayer, we are praying to shift our reality, shift what we're experiencing. And the power for that comes from the creative center of what we are. And that's what this whole week is about, the whole year. When we talk about stepping up into that grand rising, remember, we're going all the way back to January. Now here we are at the end of the year, and instead of being like, yes, grand rising, it's kind of like, it's the end of the year. It's another year coming. Okay. Whew. And I shouldn't model that for you, because I am stepping into my grand rising, and like I said, it's not either or, it's always this mix. And so I don't want anyone to beat ourselves up. Nobody is 100%. And if we ever were, that's when you poof, and you just disintegrate back into the original source energy, and you're done. But that, eventually maybe that's what we all end up doing. But in order to create at our highest capacity, at our highest possibilities, it has to come from heart space. We have to be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to be hurt, willing to be judged. But when we lean more frequently towards our heart space, none of that matters. What other people, like I was talking about, if I worry about what everybody else says, I'm their prisoner. So to shift into our most powerful opening in that heart space, and it's a constant, repetitive thing. And that's why we call it spiritual practice. So when you wake up and you remember, like, I'm stepping into my grand rising today. I'm going to go out and I'm going to hold the door unabashedly. I'm going to speak my word, and I'm going to speak it kindly, but I'm not going to keep it within because I don't want to be ostracized. I don't want to be judged for the feelings that I have. We all have our unique personalities, and we're here to share that with others. And as we do, and we see reactions from others, we tailor how we show up in the future. So Ernest Holmes would direct us to show up in the future from that place of vulnerability, from that place of heart. And that's where real power and real living comes from, in my opinion. So this is from the Science of Mind textbook. And Ernest Holmes said, "Love is the central flame of the universe, nay, the very fire itself. Love is self-givingness through creation, the imparting of the divine through the human." So I've talked about it before, that love with a capital L, that is all that matters in the world. It's the only thing that's real. It's the only thing that is constant. Everything else that appears to be other than that is still that love with a capital L, acting in a different way to help you see that that's love with a capital L, and to know it for that first time or the 100th time. Sometimes we need reminders. We're just swimming in a giant sea of love with a capital L. It's an energy, it's a life force, it is everything that we are here for. And then when we talk about the power of spiritual practice and holding a vibration, this is what Ernest Holmes was talking about. He says, feeling, organized and directed, is intelligent creation. So we're always creating, but we can get trapped in our minds. And like, I'm going to pray for this. This is the outcome I want, and this is what I'm going to pray for. And then letting it go. And then if it doesn't happen the exact way that we thought, then we think maybe the prayer didn't happen, didn't work. But if we come from that place of heart, then we know, like, we pray for outcomes, but we're open for this or something greater, this or something better. And then just having faith that, like, what comes out is exactly what was supposed to come out. And in hindsight, we were just talking about this a little while ago, in hindsight, we always see it. You see, to look back and say, that happened and this is what I got out of it. But when we're in it, like, that's part of the game. You can't feel it. You can't see it. It's just so tough and challenging. And we want to shut down. But those are the moments when we're called to open wider. The master teacher that I refer to every now and then, I love the teachings and words of Jesus, the man Christ. Repeats over and over again, love your enemies. That's heart. It's the only thing that it is on a cosmic level, on a soul level. That heart is a vibration and it ripples out. And when we talk about creating a shift in consciousness on this planet, so we talk about a grand rising, that's where it happens. It happens from within. It's our hearts. That's what we're being called to do today, is to just lean into those feelings of unconditional love. Look back to those periods of vulnerability and say, I wasn't safe back then, and now I have like this illusion maybe of safety, because as we know, you're never completely safe. So shutting down your heart and staying into that place to not get hurt, it's no guarantee. And getting to the end of that life and always staying in that protective cocoon is, in my estimation, feel like getting hurt. So you're going to get hurt. eventually sometime anyway. Why not go big on the way out? Why not open up into your heart space and know that every time you make that choice, that you make the choice between heart, or brain. Remember, it's a balance, but the more often that we choose collectively to move into heart, it creates a bigger and bigger vibration, and that is how the world will become the kinder, gentler place that supports one another. So being in the world, but not of it. All right, so our spiritual principle that I want to draw on this week is we believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. So if I believe the Spirit is loving and kind, and I believe that I am Spirit, that means I'm loving and kind. Is that how I'm showing up? Sometimes. But the more I try, then the more I see it return back to me. So our spiritual practice that I want to highlight this week is sacred service. And we talk about sacred service here a lot, like talking about a new lead for the activities team. There is something about coming together and offering to serve without any expectation. I don't care if somebody says thank you when I walk by, because I want to open that door. But sacred service, we talk about it here, but it's anywhere in the world. Anytime that you see somebody drop something and you can tell they're fumbling with some bags, and you bend down and pick it up and just say, here. Little tiny things. That is serving. That is serving humanity. And don't discount the power of a kind word here when somebody's having a struggle, or a kind gesture. It opens hearts. And until all of our hearts are starting to open, we're stuck. Because it coming from brain, we can intellectualize a lot of ways to do things that we normally wouldn't do, that might go outside of our ethics, because we can make excuses, the saying like, well, it's just business. Sorry, it's just business. That kind of mentality. That's not going to take us where we want to go as a collective. That's always going to be in the, I got to get mine. That means that you got to lose some of yours. That's not our nature. We are an infinite divine being that we're here to share, to grow, and we know it. We feel it. We remember it from something that we come from. So our affirmation for our spiritual practice of the week, I want to just invite you and encourage you to think of little ways that you can just come altruistically and say, I want to do this. I want to do this for you, for me, for whatever. So the affirmation this week, if you'll join me, we can read it together. I let the fire of infinite love blaze in my heart. Yeah, I like that affirmation too. That it's that spark of life, and it's there just waiting for us to put some more logs onto that fire and let it go. A lot of times we're like, I will be in this different way when I have this thing. That's kind of like telling the stove, I'm gonna put some wood in it when it gives me some heat, but I'm not giving it to it until it warms me, because I need to make sure that it's gonna warm me if I put this in there. But you're never gonna know unless you take that step and make yourself vulnerable to get outside of there. So let's do this affirmation one more time, and then we'll take it into prayer. I let the fire of infinite love blaze in my heart. So just going within, knowing that there is that one infinite source of all life, that I am that everybody hearing these words is that all of humanity here, we are an expression of the divine, and we are manifesting and making real the infinite nature of which we come from, and that each and every individual on this planet is 100% unique, will never be duplicated, so everyone has their unique, exact gifts that are theirs to bring into this world. So I open up knowing that the gifts, the talents, the treasures all of that is making itself more and more clear to everybody that's hearing these words. That Spirit is whispering right now, saying that thing you wanted to do, it's time to do it. That thing you wanted to give to somebody, it's time to give it. This thing that you are wanting to be a part of lifting humanity to a higher place of consciousness, it is now. That time is now. So I know the Spirit is always pushing us until vision starts pulling us to recognize that the rain that falls on the earth falls for all. The stars shine for everyone. My heart is open for all of humanity, for all of Spirit, and I know that when I lean into serving Spirit at its highest level, I can let go of all outcomes because Spirit is everything that exists. And so if Spirit is served, every single person on this planet is served. And we do that by serving those around us. So as a manifestation of God, speaking to and with other manifestations of God, I invite that presence within to rise up, to whisper in your ear and let you know that you are absolutely perfect exactly as you are, and that our evolution is inevitable, and that eternal life is already yours. So in gratitude for all it is, I say thank you. And I just let these words go, rippling throughout, and affirming that it is so by saying, and so it is. So it is. Thank you.